that long-ranging debate that we've had for years, perhaps decades even before me, is Mysore Pak Tamilian or Kannadiga. I thought we would settle it, and yesterday we have settled it. Vikram and I have authoritatively settled at the home of the founder of Sri Krishna Sweets. But I'm saying this in a very lighter vein, so please don't take me very seriously. Last time I had the fortune of meeting Miss Nirmala Sitharaman. She gifted me some Mysore Pak, and I tweeted it saying that I am the one-man committee for giving the GI tag to Mysore Pak, Tamil Nadu. And within an hour or so, all hell broke loose in Karnataka. I mean, in Bangalore, people were after my blood. There was a panelist called Ranganathan, no relation. He digitally spat at me, said, "Thu Ranganathan for, you are a blot on the name of Ranganathans." Then there came some actors who said, "We can give Tamil Nadu Kaveri, but not Mysore Pak. So catch this rascal Ranganathan, we'll take him." So I had to apologize. I had to ask my friend Tejasvi came to my rescue. I said, "Tejasvi, please help me." And he said, no, he's joking and all. But of course I wasn't joking. I was very serious. Mysore Pak is Tamilian. But the second reason so it is a pilgrimage for me to come to Coimbatore. The second reason for the pilgrimage is that, and this is a serious one, that I see a lot of devas and devis out here in the gathering. Of course, we live in a woke world, so there might be some who are of indeterminate gender, I don't know. But there is one God that I wanted to meet, and that God is Dr. K.K. Mohammed. And I say this for no other reason than for being, if at all, if I can be ruthlessly objective, that if there are people who are still unsure about how they should proceed in their life, what kind of profession they should do, the answer lies in the life of Dr. Mohammed himself. And I'm going to talk, the topic I'm going to talk on is whose freedom of speech is it anyway? So I'm going to be talking about the cancel culture, the freedom of speech and expression. Decades ago, before Twitter existed, before social media existed, when Dr. Mohammed discovered that indeed there was a temple of Hindu origin under the Babri Mosque, he was authoritatively asked by a lot of his peers as well as the government to suppress this news. He actually was. And in his response, he said something that I quote. He said something in Sanskrit. I'm sorry, my Sanskrit is as good as M.R. Venkatesh's Tamil. So my apologies there. And I promise Venkatesh I'll get back at M.R. for all the slights that he's committed against both of us. So Dr. Mohammed said, "Loka sangrahamay vapi sampasham kartum hasi sarva dharme nidhanam shreya," which is, I will speak the truth. I prefer death than to lie on duty. So while there are many Devis and Devas that I've had the pleasure of meeting and interacting, the second part of my pilgrimage is to have the honor of meeting Dr. Mohammed. Thank you very much again. The topic that I will, and I've promised the organizers that I will keep at least half of the time allotted to me to have a wonderful question and answer sessions with the audience. Unlike M.R. Anna, who gobbled up all the time as he does, being a panelist, I didn't leave any to you, but I promised to do that. So I'll probably speak for 15 odd minutes, and then we'll leave the rest half an hour or 20 minutes to the audience. You can ask me questions, and we'd love to have an interactive session. When we talk of the title, which is whose FOS is it anyway? It is a rhetorical question, because the answer is it should be ours. It is our freedom of speech. Because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be even asking this question. And I speak as a free speech absolutist. I have been ever since I came in the public eye, or possibly even before that. I had structured my views, and I'm happy to say that unlike many politicians, I'm not a hypocrite about it. My views have not changed for the last 10, 12 years. But when I say that I am a free speech absolutist, I also have to explain, because there are 4 caveats that I carry when I call myself a free speech absolutist. It doesn't mean that I believe in absolute free speech. No, I don't. What are these 4 caveats? And let me explain those 4 caveats. The first one is that you cannot divulge state secrets, obviously. This would come as a detriment to many Indian journalists. But yeah, you cannot, for example, talk to Pakistan and say, oh, these are the military positions, Indian army positions, and you can do that. And this would also goes for M.R. Venkatesh Anna when he divulged that I don't know Tamilian. That's a state secret. You're not supposed to divulge that. You can't divulge that in the name of freedom of speech. Obviously, that goes. The second caveat is that you cannot shout in the name of freedom of speech, fire in a crowded auditorium, because that will affect the physical well-being of people. That would harm people physically. You can't do that. The third is that you cannot have a hate speech in a mob, lead a mob by giving a hate speech that has immediate violent consequences. Now, I have worded what I've said very carefully. So, of course, we've had books for 1300 years that have hate speech, and nobody does anything about it. We accept it. Although people have tried to ban it, the high courts have thrown those petitions out. So you cannot ban a book that is 1300 years old, that is as hateful as it can get. Now, I cannot name what those books are, but I'm sure all of you are clever enough to understand that. We don't have rules that allow me to say that openly. So you cannot, for example, say something to a mob, and in the next instant, in the palpable, immediate instant, violence is committed. So that, of course, harms someone physically. So that is the third caveat. And the fourth is, you cannot slander someone with evidence, because then it goes into the realm of defamation laws, and there are lawsuits for that, and that person can sue you. So while you can say that broadly, you can allege, and people are alleging that all the time, because you can't have 1 billion lawsuits. I mean, as it is, our justice system is overburdened. So you can say Anand is corrupt. I'm within my rights to sue you, but that's like very abstract. I mean, then you'll say, well, what do you mean by what is corruption? Usi mein, the whole case will go in that. Then you'll say, oh, there are moral parameters to corruption, and what I meant was that Anand is morally corrupt, he's ethically corrupt, he's not actually corrupt. So, I mean, all that is very abstract. So you can say Anand is corrupt, but you cannot say that Anand took $600,000 from Ambani, because then you are alleging something, slandering me with evidence, which you don't have. Or if you have it, then you produce it. So these are the 4 caveats that I have. Other than that, I think everything is kosher. Everything should be allowed in the domain of free speech. So when I say I'm a free speech absolutist, these are the 4 things. Other than that, it should be allowed. Now, why do I say everything should be allowed? That is the crux, the nub of the issue. I say it because who am I to judge? Who? Will I decide what you say is right or wrong? Because that is what essentially is happening. That is what is happening in each of our domains. You talk about science, you talk of philosophy, you talk of news, politics, sports. We are determining. Subjectivity is being injected into our thought process, and we are saying what you said I did not like. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to either sue you, or I'm going to commit or have a mob against you. So that is subjectivity. Now, in any given domain, the moment you bring in the word subjectivity, all hell breaks loose, because what is acceptable to one person may not or will not be acceptable to the other person. What I find not egregious, you may find terribly egregious. And you say, I find this unacceptable. And that is what is happening. And unless we have a kind of a unwritten rule, which Hindus and Hinduism, I don't know whether we are allowed to say Hindus or Hindu religion. I mean, Kamal Hassan might object to that. But incidentally, before the phrase jackass came into being, you could still call Kamal Hassan one. I mean, even though... I mean, just because a word jackass didn't exist doesn't mean that jackasses didn't exist. I mean, I'm sure Kamal, But the fact of the matter is that this is all subjective. And when I say Hindus and Hinduism have been taking it on the chin very gladly, and there is a reason for that. And the reason for that is that is how societies progress, through mutations that are accumulated, through diversity that comes. That is how societies and civilizations adapt. And when a civilization cannot adapt, you can either leave the realm of societal living, which is equitable, and you have well-being for everyone, or you simply die and perish. Now, Hindus haven't perished. Hinduism hasn't perished. Of course, it has a lot to do with the tremendous strength of our ancestors who fought for it and did not decide to convert. We were just talking in the morning how most of the most vociferous religious zealots of the Islamic dispensation were either first-generation Kashmiri Hindus or, second-generation Jains. As Naipaul has said, that, it is always the one who's converted who is the most vigorous in spreading the faith. But the point I'm trying to make is that Hinduism very early on realized, through its all-questioning thesis and philosophical bent of mind, that unless I start to question everything, unless I pass through this, as they say, the phrase, aag ka darya, a river of fire, unless I swim through that, I will not be able to have faith with the kind of resolution that I must have that my idea is good. I will be mediocre. I will collect a group of mediocre people who will say, yes, this is a great idea. But the moment I come out of that ecosystem, you may call it that, or left liberal ecosystem, left liberal being an oxymoron of a kind, but each one of them is supporting each other, even though all of them are complete jackasses. They don't know, the expression is rather rude, elbow from their ass, but that's the whole thing. None of them is a proper historian or a commentator or anyone. And I'll come to their hypocrisy when it comes to free speech. But the fact of the matter is, they are, as Vivek Agnihotri's film said, that government to tumhari hai, lekin system to hamara hai. So system unka hai. Because the system is so huge. It can almost run the whole theme of who's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. That is the strength of the system. And believe me, I mean, my commiserations that Nobel Prize was not awarded, but in 2024, when Rahul Gandhi becomes the Prime Minister, Bharat Ratna would be awarded. So have faith. That was a joke, by the way. Because as I said, there is a strong parallel between Kamal Hassan and Rahul Gandhi, so please. But the fact of the matter is that in Hinduism, religion is an offshoot of a way of life. While in Islam or Abrahamic religions that haven't had reforms, way of life is an offshoot of religion. And that is why in Hinduism, you can mutate, things change over a long period of time when you have a way of life rather than when you have a very strictly, prescribed way, the way you're going to deal with set of rules. So Hinduism has always accepted that, yes, we need criticism. You can mock every ism except criticism. We accept it because that is how we are going to change. We are going to say that, yes, this idea has stood the test of time. These phrases, every word has a density. And when you say this is an idea that has stood the test of time, I think that's a beautiful thing. Rather than you come up with an idea and you have 200,000 people saying, oh, what a brilliant idea. This is amazing. This is what the left does. And after 10 or 15 years, that idea is no one's even talking about it because that's just complete crap. But there are some ideas, a lot of ideas in Hinduism that have stood for not just 10 years, 20 years, but for thousands of years, millennia. Why is that? That is because it was left open for anyone to come and criticize it. And from Natya Shastra itself, I mean, I'm not a Vedic scholar of any dispensation. I know as much as I said, about Hinduism and Vedas as possibly Kamal Hassan or M.R. Venkatesh Anna knows about it. But my criticism of M.R. ends there. After that, I'm not. He's there at the back. He'll say, I'll come outside, I'll see you. So it is our FOS. I was going to say our SOS, but it's our FOS. We have to reclaim it because we have to show to the world that this idea will stand the test of time. Criticize it. I throw it to the public. Beat it. Do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you accept that this idea is good, this idea is bad. Let us carry forward this idea. Now, I'll tell you what the left liberal, all this cabal does. These so-called, they call themselves liberal, but they're anything but liberal. And you've seen it with a very recent thing of Miss Monica. She wrote a book on the 2020 Delhi riots. That book was accepted by the publisher, very reputed publisher, Bloomsbury. And that book, the manuscript went through the editorial stage, it was reviewed, it went through 3 editorial reviews, and after that the book was ready. And then all hell broke loose. You had complete idiots from the leftists and those things. They said that no, this book should not be published. They completely browbeat and blackmailed Bloomsbury, starting from their historians onwards. They ran a campaign, and as a result, Bloomsbury had to backtrack. They didn't publish that book. And when you ask these people, are you the editor? Are you the publisher of Bloomsbury? What gives you the right to say that Bloomsbury should not publish this? Their response was very interesting. They said, the book is a bunch of lies, and that is why it should not be published. So by that logic, any book that says that the earth was created in 7 days, and the earth is flat, and the moon is split into 2, and people are going on flying horses, science has proven that to be a lie. So by their own logic, those holy books should not be published. What kind of crap is that? But that is what their ecosystem has perfected. We decide. And if we cannot decide, we still have our system which is intact. We will tell those publishers that we will not allow those books to be published. And what happened was they actually won. And I'll tell you how they won, because there are many from the, or you can say the other side, the sensible, logical side, that said if Bloomsbury takes back that book, then I'm not going to publish Bloomsbury. Mr. Sanjay Dikshit, I really respect him for that. His book was almost going to come out. It's going to be almost published. And he said, I'm withdrawing my book. Sanjeev Sanyal said that I'm not going to publish from Bloomsbury. I was also one of the ones who said, I'm taking my book back. I returned with interest the advance that I had got for my book. But the fact of the matter is that Bloomsbury is still prospering. There are many people from all sides of the ideological spectrum who are submitting their manuscripts from Bloomsbury. They have their reasons, and I would say they're justifiable. They have their rationalization. But the fact is nothing happened. Bloomsbury did not publish Miss Monica's book. Who won at the end? They won. So all these champions of FOS who say that, we stand for free speech, they did not stand for free speech. They browbeat a publisher into rejecting a book that was almost going to be published within a week's time. It was that late that they moved in. And they've done it time and again. Nupur Sharma is another example. Now, that's a very interesting example, because when you hear the rationalization of the people who again who support Salman Rushdie, but they object to Nupur Sharma. Now, Salman Rushdie, I don't believe in this concept of blasphemy, by the way. But if at all somebody were to draw out what blasphemy is, I think it's terrible. But if somebody were to do it, certainly Salman Rushdie blasphemed. Because, the kind of things that he said about the Prophet Muhammad, about his wives, about his followers, about Mecca, you can say, as I said, if somebody were to draw out what blasphemy is, no one should. But if somebody should, that yes. Compare that to Nupur. She quoted the hadiths. Now, are you telling me that kafirs or non-believers cannot quote Islamic scriptures? Because that is what the reality is. But the fact of the matter is, on the very day when all this broke loose, I tweeted those 2 verses. Now, my sar is still satisfactorily attached to my tan. Till now, I'm speaking. I'm not a hologram. But now there is a genuine danger. For how long? Because at least 7 people have been grievously injured, 2 of them killed, for simply saying that I support Nupur Sharma. And it is not that some of them do not have any powerful parties backing them, that they are, commoners. You have a Shiv Sena member, very prominent member, Lawrence. He's a Christian, by the way. He is living in fear. He contacted me from nowhere and he said, look, I'm living in a locality which is a Muslim locality, and they're saying, we know your address, we know your grandmother's address, we know where you live, we know where your relatives live. Take back the fact that you said that you support Nupur Sharma. That's it. He's not committed any blasphemy, but he knows his future. I hope it is not the same that what held for Kamlesh Tiwari or Kanhaiya Lalji. But in the name of free speech, when you ask these people who supported Rushdie, you know what they said? They said Nupur, being a non-Muslim, had no right to comment upon things that concern Muslims. These are the same people who were supporting the Charlie Hebdo journalists, who were commenting, who were Christian, but were commenting on Islam. So you see the hypocrisy, and they have rationalized it to such extent, this cabal, that each one of them is supporting the other. They are writing op-eds. In fact, one celebrated. He's not a leftist. He's not even a Darbari. I don't know how to slot that guy, but he's just a jackass maybe. A copper-plated jackass, because those are the ones very Teflon-coated. They can sit on hot fire and still they can, sit for prolonged periods. The copper-plated jackasses. He withdrew his support that he had for decades for Salman Rushdie, so that he could criticize Nupur. This is the kind of moral vacuity that exists on the other side. Okay? For 3 decades, he was supporting Salman Rushdie. He wrote so many articles supporting him. But then he must have thought, how can I support Salman Rushdie and oppose Nupur? So what do? I cannot support Nupur. So let me oppose Salman Rushdie. These are the people. They're vice chancellors. They are people at high position. You have the other side vying for their attention, craving for, their validity. Why? This is why I say that if you really need to go for asking this question, whose FOS is it anyway? You have to realize that each one of us is an ecosystem of our own. Let us not vie for an ecosystem, because we would unnecessarily be replicating mediocrity. It would be a landfill of lies and untruths, and it would spew methane like the leftist ecosystem does. Each one of us should lend our ideas that we generate or support open to criticism. And that is what the right wing does. And many people criticize it on the face of it, ki hamesha ladte, they're always fighting, and there are memes that says, Khoob lado, samapt kar do ek dusre ko. There are lovely memes that right-wingers are always fighting. I think it's a great thing. I think it's fantastic, because you are lending your ideas to scrutiny, which is what happens in science all the time. I mean, can you imagine a scenario if I were to say that cold fusion is a fact? It is also a fact that man and woman were created by God, and I have proven it scientifically. And as a scientist, I will not allow you to criticize this fact that cold fusion, I say, exists. I will not allow. It is blasphemy. Can you imagine a scientist ever doing that? Think about it. Scientists don't do that. Why? Because they want their ideas to stand the test of time. What is the point if I tell you that you're not supposed to criticize this? That is what happened with Galileo. He was forced to apologize. He was killed for saying what was right. Are we going into the territory where people cannot even say what they feel resolutely about their ideas? So that is the tragedy. The third thing that I want to say out here is again an argument which is a very rational and intelligent argument. That is, because you say that let anybody say anything, the Muslims will then say things about Hinduism, which they are, by the way, and by Muslims I mean you can say non-Hindus or the establishment that is happening in the film domain or in arts, in others. They are criticizing Hinduism vapidly and rapidly. When Hindus criticize, it leaves the realm of the court system and it goes extrajudicial. So it doesn't matter if the court will allow you or not, you will have those Sar Tan Se Juda people and they have already decided that you will die. So this argument is that you need a system whereby you can hold the non-Hindus also to be prosecuted for what they say, because Hindus are being prosecuted extrajudicially for what they say. So it's a rational point. To that I say, are you not taking Hindus, thousands upon thousands of Hindus, as collateral? Because I'll give you an example. In, let us say, 100 cases of Hindus saying things that Muslims take objection to, only a handful, maybe 2 or 3 are the ones that Muslims object as true blasphemy, that they've said something against Prophet Muhammad or something like that. Overwhelming majority of them are just passing a photoshopped something or something that is that the words offend. It's not blasphemous. Now, in this whole system where you want to put this section 295A and prosecute those Hindus, the lives of those 98 people who did not commit blasphemy are also destroyed. Just one example would suffice. There's a guy called Sunny Gupta. He is a 20-year-old engineer in Maharashtra. He was thrown in jail for 45 days. The news that he has been jailed for 45 days came out after he came out of jail. So nobody could protest. Nobody knew the news. That is the other thing. The propaganda is run 2 ways. One is you run a propaganda of fake news. The other, you run a propaganda where you don't publish the news at all, so that there is no outrage on it. So nobody knew that Sunny Gupta has already spent 45 days in jail. You know what his crime was? He just requested Hindus to not go to Ajmer Sharif Dargah. That is all he did. Muslims objected, and he was thrown in jail for 45 days under section 295A. Now, did he commit blasphemy? Even Muslims accept that he did not commit blasphemy. But what he said, we object to because he offended our religious sensibilities. It is the same Ajmer Dargah that stood up for the killers of Kanhaiya Lalji, who supported Nupur Sharma, where those 3 Chishtis, one of them aided and abetted the killers of Kanhaiya Lal, the fellow, I don't know whether he's been arrested, he was on the run. The second one said that if you touch or say anything like what Nupur did, earthquake will come in India. We will start such a revolution. And the third one, I don't know what he did, he's still on the run. So this is the same Ajmer Dargah where Hindus essentially are running it, making it profitable. And all Sunny did was, he asked the Hindus not to go there. He was thrown in jail. His life is destroyed now. For what reason? Does anyone in this audience support that yes, because we want a law that free speech is not absolute and anyone who offends religious sensibilities, be it Hindu religious sensibilities or Muslim religious sensibilities, should be prosecutable? Therefore, anybody who said that what Sunny Gupta has said is offensive was within his rights, and the court and our systems are within their right to deem it offensive, and therefore Sunny Gupta should be put in jail. Does it make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. I'll give you another example of Aman. He's an anchor. You know, he's an anchor who's who says self-confessed right-winger, and he said something when a temple was bulldozed in Rajasthan, and that was considered egregious to the Muslim community. And because Rajasthan is ruled by the Congress, they sent the police to arrest him. They sent the police all the way to where he stays in Delhi or someplace to arrest him. Now, what he said was actually factual, that indeed that temple was raised by the authorities in Rajasthan. But that seemed to have offended some people. So it is an absolute free-for-all. What I say is that you should not have any rule whatsoever, because no rule is better than some rule which has to be decided on the basis of subjectivity. Hindus have to reclaim this. The third and final point before I throw it open to questions is that, why do I say this? Why is Hinduism better? Why has it evolved compared to other thought processes or ideologies? It is because if we did not have free speech, if Hindus were not free to criticize each other and their ideas, we would not have had Dayanand Saraswati. We would not have had this amazing document called Satyarth Prakash. Okay, we would not have had Arya Samaj. And right now, believe it or not, there would be many Hindus who would have wanted to put Dayanand Saraswati in jail, who would have asked for the ban of Satyarth Prakash. And if you were to read, I urge you to read Satyarth Prakash. It's not enough. Now we have to go back to what the teachings of our heroes were. Rather than eulogize and worship the heroes, let us look at their teachings objectively. Read Satyarth Prakash, and trust you me, there are about 12 or 13 chapters. Every chapter you would be sucking in a breath saying, oh my God, he actually said this. Oh my God, he actually wrote this. This is what he's written. But for 100 years, Hindus accepted it. There are millions of Arya Samajis. They adapted. They said, no, what he said is right. Let us put it to test. And if it passed the test, people turned into Arya Samajis. They were welcome. And when somebody were criticizing Hindus, I said, you know what is the punishment for apostasy in Hinduism? It is Bharat Ratna. Ambedkar said, I was born a Hindu, but I will not die a Hindu. He converted. He became an apostate. You know, every day at least 15 to 20,000 people go to the place where he turned into a Buddhist. In Nagpur, I've been to that place. Hindus worship him. He was given Bharat Ratna. This is the punishment of apostasy in Hinduism. You know what is the punishment for apostasy in Islam? It's death. You cannot become an apostate in Islam. I mean, you can, but then you will be living in fear, because you are, by law, it is commanded that anyone who has left the fold of Islam has to be killed. In Hinduism, it is the other way. So, we have to go back and remember the glory of what it means to have freedom of speech. Let us cherish it. And lastly, 30 seconds. When I gave the example of Satyarth Prakash, for a century it has stood the test of time. People venerate Swami Dayananda. People read that book. Many might find, as I say, the current crop might find it blasphemous. But for 100 years, the book was not banned. No Hindu asked for a ban. Until 2008, two people asked for the ban. It went to the High Court. There were protests. Do you know who those two people were who asked Satyarth Prakash to be banned? No idea? They were, no, they were Muslims. Muslims asked for Satyarth Prakash to be banned. Hindus did not. Why? Because the Muslims said there was a fatwa on Satyarth Prakash. See this news. There was a fatwa on Satyarth Prakash written a century or more ago. Why? Because it said it is opening the eyes of Hindus. If it is opening the eyes of believers, those believers could also be Muslims. And those Muslims could then do ghar wapsi. I am not kidding you. This was the reason why fatwa was given. This is the power of thinking, of ideas. And if we start banning those ideas, then we ourselves will not develop. I'll end there. Thank you very much.